Dear students, this is session 25th. In this session, I am going to talk about introduction to metaphysical poetry. So, this is prescribed for third semester in Davangere University for optional English students. So, here are some of the learning objectives as well as session outcomes. So, in the beginning, the students have to know some learning objects. The main intention is to make students to know about the arrival of Renaissance and the Church, to understand how Reformation humanism followed, paralleled with the advent of metaphysical poetry, and also to understand the period as coincided with the death of Elizabeth and also subsequent weakening of the strong monarchy of the Tudors. So, at the end of the session, there are some session outcomes. That means students will be able to know the meaning and origin of metaphysical, particularly. They are also able to know the historical religious backgrounds of the poetry, and they will definitely take much interest for metaphysical poets and metaphysical poetry. So they will try to read definitely the poetry that is of metaphysical. So in the beginning, let us see origin and development of metaphysical. See, the term metaphysical was first used and coined by Samuel Johnson. It was used to describe a loose group of 17th century English poets. So, metaphysical poetry was started in the 17th century. It was an age of transition. It was also considered as a modern mind began, characterized by the inventive use of the metaphysical poetry is characterized by the inventive use of conceits and by a greater emphasis on the spoken rather than lyrical quality of their verse. These poets, metaphysical poets, reacted directly against the what we call Elizabethan literary style and ideas, because their poetry was totally against the poetry or literature of Elizabethan writers. They rejected the conventional idea of love which was used by Elizabethan poets, and their indifference to real experience as a romantic pleasure. These poets, metaphysical poets, attempted to analyze personal and also intimate experiences of love on particular occasions. The emphasis was on the practical experience. Things happen now, and so immediacy was a particular characteristic of their poetry. They rebelled, the metaphysical poets rebelled against accepted ideas, that is deification of nature and the notion of greatness of kings, because Elizabethan writers, they worshipped kings. They were writing more about kings, but these people did not. The themes were usually serious, however often they were satirical. Religion was the constant topic to what was called the true religion. There was little reference to contemporary matters, political or otherwise, but the problems of the time were often reflected in the poetry, especially the religious issues. So, the metaphysical poets, though did not give much importance for the political matters, they had given much importance, much priority the problems arised in the religious issues. The poems were not aimed at public readership. They did not write mainly for the reading, but at the intellect of their own closely knit group. That means they were written only for the intellectual people of that time. So it has its own historical and religious background. The religious breakdown of the established order with dreams of reform and social rebirth by levelers and diggers, Puritans and Anabaptists, Quakers and Septics. Then the transforming of England from an agriculture to a manufacturing country. So this was the development or transition what we had seen, or transformation. The transformation was not only from agriculture to manufacturing country, but also from organic garden to joint stock academy. So we can see mainly three changes during that time. One was blood and confusion, another one was revolution and restoration, third one was new historical identity. So revolution in the form of civil war, restoration in the form of monarchy. The heritage of Queen Elizabeth first was one of the centralization, peace and prosperity. That means her period was very famous for peace and prosperity and also for centralization, because she had given much priority for patriotism. It was her loyalty. She delegated her authority wisely. Religion and politics were closely linked. When, as she was the supreme head of the Church of England, she maintained religious tolerance as the Puritan and Catholic minorities. She maintained religious tolerance as the Puritan, and automatically Catholic minority strengthened. England came to accept the Copernican view of Earth. Instead, the Ptolemaic system, with the great developments in science and discoveries in the navigation, astronomy, cartography, medicine. That means during her period, so many discoveries and developments took place in science and almost all other fields. It may be navigation or astronomy or anything. So people until then, what they thought, what they accepted, Ptolemy concept or Ptolemy system. So what is Ptolemy system? Earth is the center, sun is rotating around the earth. But with the advent of development of science, they came to know that no, earth is not center. That is according to Copernicus. Earth, sun is the center. Sun does not rotate around the earth. So under the rule of James I, religious schemes widened. Puritanism and Roman Catholicism became more militant in their light against the established Church of England. Political strife intermingled with religious dissension was brought to a head by his insistence on the oneness of church and state. See, as I told already, this metaphysical term was first coined by Samuel Johnson in his book called Lives of the Most Eminent English Poets, which was published in written in 1779 to 81. So Samuel Johnson wrote about a group of 17th century British poets that included John Donne, George Herbert, Richard Crash, Andrew Marvell, Henry Vaughan. So metaphysical poets these were. He claimed that means Samuel Johnson claimed that the start of the 17th century witnessed with the birth of a kind of poets that may be termed as metaphysical. So according to Samuel Johnson, beginning of the 17th century writers were the metaphysical poets. So deriving from the term metaphysical term is derived from Latin term. It means beyond, after physics. I mean, metaphysical means beyond. Meta means beyond, physical means physical world, beyond the physical world. But during 1920s, T.S. Eliot did much to establish importance of the metaphysical school. Though it was first referred and used by Samuel Johnson, actually T.S. Eliot brought metaphysical poet to the world only in the 20th century. So this refers to concepts of overtly abstract in nature. So it may be deemed, the poetry may be deemed philosophical, difficult, ethereal, obscure, supercilious, ingenious, and just plain bizarre. Bizarre. The metaphysical poets were men of high intellect and of phenomenal acumen and virtuosity. So, all Oxford and Cambridge graduates are studied at the Inns of the Court in London. So, these are all the persons from either Oxford University or Cambridge University. The poetry is replete with numerous allusions to cosmology, medicine, contemporary discoveries, ancient myth, history, art, and law. This assisted them in presenting new ideas and new stories to reader. They enjoyed showing off their education and virtuosity. They merged diverse ideas forcibly and used nature and art to establish conceits, imagery, allusions, which are the main characteristics of metaphysical poetry. Then their achievement should surprise the reader. The poems definitely share common characteristics, what I've told already in the previous slide, all highly intellectualized, strange imagery, frequent paradox, contain extremely complicated thought. However, the poetry is not regarded as a genre of poetry. In fact, the main poets of this group did not read each other's book, did not know that they were even part of classification as metaphysical poets. In this way, in this what we have seen uh, in this session, definitely we have seen much about the background to the metaphysical poetry, how it is changed and developed. So, remaining things about metaphysical poets and poems, let us see in the next session. Thank you.